I'd like to call the meeting of the Willits City Council for August 9th, 2017 to order. And Dusty, could you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, roll call, Kathy. And
Councilmember Rodriguez. Present. Straw.
Here.
Bernstein.
Nothing up here.
Stransky.
yes,
Mayor Gonzalez.
here. So I think we have some new items to add to the agenda. We need to add a 9C1 resolution to accept FAA grant offer, a 9C2 budget amendment for ADA improvements to city parking lots, 11A letter of opposition to SB 649 wireless and small cell telecommunication facilities, and 14A closed session anticipated litigation. So can I get a motion to amend the agenda?
I so move.
And a second. Motion second. Any further discussion? If not, call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Public communication. The council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone may be given an opportunity to be heard. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the council on the same subject matter, the mayor may request that a spokesperson be chosen by the group. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the city council which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the city council, commissions, boards, agencies will not be prohibited. No action shall be taken. I see Alan is right up there, right on time.
I don't want to take any more time than I need to. I'm here to address a late breaking issue with the cannabis regulations, and I'm sorry I didn't, I'm not an expert in this, so my interest was originally economic development, but I got involved trying to help some people with establishing their medical cannabis campus, and I'm starting to find out now that it's more complicated. You might have heard that line from some of you. It's more complicated than I thought it was. There is an issue that has come up to my attention now that regarding volatile solvents, and I have passed out a thing on it. Apparently, as far as I can tell, and maybe there are people in the audience that are better equipped to address this, but the extraction process that we've been talking about, and I think the council is very concerned about, that uses like butane and hexane and those very explosive types of solvents, is the thing that the council is, I think, trying to eliminate. There is a solvent called ethanol, and that is used with the CO2 extraction process. It's commonly used, it's used in the one you were in Santa Rosa. It's used almost exclusively because, as the way I understand it, the CO2 extraction process doesn't leave the oils in a way that's usable. They have to go through a further purification process which uses ethanol, which is basically food-grade alcohol. Ethanol is what we drink in our wine and beer. But there are stronger versions of ethanol that are flammable. But anyway, so I'm here to ask that the council direct your staff to look into some way to, when you're addressing the volatile solvents, to allow ethanol. I believe Governor Brown has introduced legislation to redefine volatile solvents, and you'll see this in this thing that I passed out. Ethanol, and your fire chief is, I don't see him here, but they are the people that would be really concerned about how ethanol is treated and stored and so forth. My understanding is that ethanol is not a heat process. It's a way of running the oils through a process that eliminates the lipids from this. And then the ethanol is all a closed loop system, so the ethanol is recycled and used over. And my understanding is it's not a real hazardous, ethanol can be flammable, so anything like that can be hazardous. But I think the way your ordinance is crafted, there are ample rules and regulations in there to control the use of ethanol. So again, my recommendation would be to see if Dusty can look around and see what other people are doing with that, and find a way to insert that into your ordinance, and I don't think it should cause a major overhaul of your ordinance or a rethinking of all your environmental or anything. It's a pretty common additive in processing, so thank you for your time.
So anybody else from the public that would like to speak on items not on our agenda today?
I would like to speak now, only because what I have to say, it's better now than later when everybody goes home. If you don't mind.
Okay, Rob?
Okay. As we're all aware, there's been a lot of talk about the bypass and the effect that it has on local businesses. So one of our local business owners took it upon themselves to create a bumper sticker. Can you see that, Jeff? And this bumper sticker, and in case you don't get the connection, exit 568 is the exit to Willits. And these bumper stickers are available. I don't know who exactly created it, but
What does
Deb
it say?
Schwartz. Who?
What does it say?
Oh, I'm sorry. You didn't see.
It's our exit.
Sorry about that. The public saw. Deb Schwartz from New Image Beauty Salon on West Mendocino Avenue either has them or can get you in touch with who has them. And I would suggest that everybody put them on their bumper stickers. I just love this idea.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else from the public? All right, then I will close public communication, and now item 3, public matters. We are continuing our public hearing from the July 26th City Council meeting, discussion possible adoption proposed Proposition 218 water and wastewater rate increases effective September 1st. So at this point, I will open up the, actually, we'll have Jim give a brief overview first before I open up the public.
Okay, I just wanted to say that last time there were some questions raised about the process that we followed and whether or not we had complied with statutory noticing requirements. And that was raised right at the point when you were ready to take a vote. We'd heard public comment, there'd been a lot of public discussion. We did a vote tally and learned that only seven written protests had been received. But then there was a question about the process, and out of caution, we decided, let's postpone the hearing, let's look into that, and so I have done so. Susie has helped me. She explained that what we did was we sent out a combined notice to discuss both the water and wastewater proposed increases, and we served those on the public by sending them to the water customers. And that's an appropriate thing to do. The code allows notices to go out to water customers who are directly billed. And that was sent out to some 2,500 water customers. And Susie determined that the 1,600 and some odd sewer customers all received those same notices because they are also water customers, with the exception of 189. So out of the city's 1,600 and some sewer customers, all but 189 received the notice. So all water customers received the notice, and all sewer customers except 189 were notified. And I found some law that suggests or that states that that is substantial compliance with the requirements of noticing. The fact that such a small number did not receive notice should not invalidate the proceedings at all. The city substantially complied with the law. And if you assume that all 189 who didn't get notice had gotten notice and also would have protested, the result still would not be changed. And so it's my opinion that the city substantially complied and that the hearing should go forward.
And the evaluation on parcels was not correct?
That's not my understanding of,
Okay.
it was not correct, it's my view.
Okay, so with that explanation, I know Bartle Wells is here to answer any questions from both the council and the public, but I think at this point, I'm going to open it up to the public to see if we have any opposition ballots that want to be tendered at today's meeting, and then I will check with the clerk. So at this point, I will open it up for the public to step up.
My name is Robin Leeler. I
just read in the paper that you were still considering water issues, just as I got my water bill this week. And I have a request for you. My household uses about 350 gallons of water a day, which sounds like a really high amount. This is because I have 7 people living in my household. And I find that I am paying almost double what everyone else in my neighborhood pays. In my neighborhood of 15 homes, most of the homes are occupied by 1 or 2 people. And so they can well afford, they can stay in within the Tier 1 rating. Because I'm bumped up to Tier 3, I'm paying about $9 a unit rather than $3.86 a unit. So I am being charged a lot more. We're very frugal. 350 gallons a day divided by 7 people is only 50 gallons a day, which I consider very frugal. So I just have a request that if you can put something in the rate structure to be more equitable to large households. I mean, out of 15 homes in my district, 13 of them have 3 people or less. So I feel like I and one neighbor who has 5 people in their family are getting the short end of the stick. We're not being treated fairly. So if you can address that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak or present a protest ballot? Okay, at this point, I'll ask our clerk for a tally.
It remains the same. We received 7 letters with 23 parcels opposing and 2 letters of concern. So it has not
For
changed.
both water and sewer?
For both water and sewer.
Okay. Okay, at this point, I will close the public hearing and bring it back up here to the council. Actually, go ahead.
I just have 2 things. Number one, to readdress the issue about the distribution of the notices. I also did the research afterwards, and I found what Jim found. One of the issues that was raised was it was a vote based on the value of the property, not the one vote per property. And in your memo and in my research, I found that it is 1 vote per property. The amount of the value of the property doesn't enter into it. So that is correct. And I just wanted to mention that because that was one of the points that was made at the last meeting. The other thing is that I received my water bill last week, and just out of curiosity, I calculated it based on the new rates. And as you've been telling us all along, my bill would have been $2.04 less under the new rates. So everybody should relax.
Could you address the point that Robin made? I think now that we're going to a 2-tier rather than 4 or whatever it is, and the first several units of water are all under Tier 1. Could you just address that briefly? For larger households, probably be less inequitable.
I'm Eric Helgeson with Barber Wells, and we did the rate study. And so with the new structure, there's only 2 tiers now. And so people who did use water up in the higher tiers, it looked like if I remember what you said, around 14 CCF, your bill will go down with the new structure slightly, yes.
Larry, do you have anything? No, I do not.
Could I also ask for clarification? When we originally heard this on the sewer rates, there was a differential if we got a loan or if we didn't get a loan. And is that, those options are still available to us? If we don't,
And that was on the water side.
On the water
On the
side.
sewer side, you absolutely do need to get some sort of financing if, depending on the time of the capital plan. The water side was a difference in rates, but I think at the end, we recommend just going with a 4% increase for the next couple of years and then seeing how your capital plan develops, like how, what pace you're on with the capital plan and seeing where your reserve level is.
But we will always have a year-to-year review of whether the rates go up by the same amount that we are allowed to raise them or less. We can't go above, but we can. Thank you.
Larry has a question.
The sewer loan is to 2040, did you say?
The one that you would, about that, I'll have to look at, I don't remember which year specifically we recommended issuing the loan, but it would be a 30-year.
Okay, so what happens is every 5 years, what's going to happen is we're going to have an increase in the 218, and then they're going to adjust for the 40-year loan or 30-year loan or whatever it is.
But the debt service will remain consistent from year to year. So once your rates are up to the point where you're supporting that debt service, you wouldn't have more increases related to the loan. Your increases would be related to inflationary cost increases and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Did you have something else, Madge? Did you have something else you had?
No, I think that answered exactly
Okay.
what I was.
So Susie, because this was at the last meeting, could you give kind of a brief recap of it, as far as all the water and sewer, just the, I'm trying to figure what we would want to do, so that what are we looking at for water and sewer recommended rates?
For the rates?
Or the, yeah,
What, okay.
just a brief recap since we're,
So what we're asking for today is to increase the water rates by 4% this year. And then for each year for the next 4 years, 4%, 5 years. For the next 5 years, 4% each year. But you look at them each year.
to see whether you need to or not.
determine whether, but that's the
But this year we would
max.
need.
But
to
this
do
year, 4%.
that. Okay,
And then for the wastewater rates or the sewer rates, we're looking at a 7% this year.
and that one, I think, to recap, we probably don't have as much fudge factor
We do
because
not have a
we have
fudge
some debt
factor.
service that we need to address with that.
Yes. And a 7% next year, and there's no fudge factor in that one either.
Okay,
So it's 7% this year, 7% next year, 5% the following year, 4.5%, 4.5%. But again, each year you look at it to determine, to make sure, I mean, maybe something happens and you come up with a new plan, or, I mean, lots of things can happen.
but again, with sewer, we don't have the latitude we have with water.
We do not.
Okay, Matt.
Well, the one thing that I would still like to have on our agenda is solarizing the electrical at the sewer plant. And I don't know how big of a impact that would have, but clearly that would have a savings.
Right.
And if we could factor that in future years, that might reduce our operating costs enough so that we wouldn't have to go to those maximum.
Exactly,
Yeah.
just something like that would change your percentage, and that's when you would
Yeah.
say, we don't have to go to our max percentage, and that's gonna change our,
So I think that's a really important goal for us in the city. But in the meantime, we want to have the rates such that, until that's possible, we are covering our debt service and not going under the reserve amount that we are required to have.
or postponing some of our large projects that we have scheduled. If that happens,
Yeah.
then of course you would postpone
Right. Yeah.
the increases as well.
And looking at the possibility of solarizing and how much that would save, I'd like to know how would that affect for the future, so we can see how big of a benefit it is for us, but I clearly think it would be beneficial.
We do have numbers that, from a study that was done 2 years ago. As I recall, over a 20-year period, we were looking at saving about an average of $150,000 a year on our electric bill.
Okay, so at this point, we're looking at a resolution then, right?
Correct.
All right. So we have a resolution that, oh, I think I did close the public hearing, didn't I?
Yes.
Yes, I closed the public hearing. So we have a resolution that we need to pass in conjunction with this, if we're going to go through with this.
Oh,
And
can I add one more thing
Sure.
before we do that? We're also changing to where the city is charging basically itself
Yes.
for its water, okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that in the resolution?
It is in the
Okay.
resolution.
Okay.
I will move approval of the resolution. Whatever that number is.
I don't think we have a number 2017, I don't know what our number will be. And the resolution is the City Council of the City of Willits adopting proposed Proposition 218 water and wastewater rate increases effective September 1st, 2017. So we'll have a second, all right. Motion second, do I have further discussion up here?
Are you sure that, I'm just glancing through this really quickly, that the resolution does include, or maybe it's not important to put in the resolution about us charging ourselves?
I believe it's in the last paragraph, but double
Yes.
check me.
It's on page 2. Now therefore be it resolved, it's the last sentence. It classifies the city as a non-residential water and sewer user.
This is a resolution?
At the very end right here. Classifies this city as a...
Yeah, and classify the city. And it's incorporating the water and sewer study.
Oh, Exhibit A has that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's also
All right,
incorporating
we have a motion, a second, and at this point, all those in favor, roll call vote.
I'm sorry, who made the first motion?
it. I mean,
Madge
Thank
and
you.
Ron made the second.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
No.
Strong?
yes.
Weinstein?
Yes.
Stransky?
No.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right. And now, on to the rest of it. Oh. I guess, item 4, consent calendar. We have city council minutes of July 26, warrant distributions, approved contract with Lakeville Associates for Water.
Thank you, gentlemen and lady. Thank you.
See you there, thank you.
I would like to pull E.
E, all right. That's approved contract with Lakeville Associates to provide hydrology services for a test well. And D is adopt resolution awarding contract to Steve Taylor Excavation for the construction of a Holly Street sewer main replacement project.
You're pulling both of those?
No, he just wants to pull E.
Okay.
I was reading what D was, so.
I had a comment on the minutes. I left a message with Kathy, but the only one was, 2 of them were little tiny typos, but the other one was to mention that in the report from Caltrans regarding their schedule of construction and so forth, we did talk briefly also about the intersection of Sherwood Road and the timing of their work on that, and that should be reflected, that was also part of that discussion. There was a little bit of controversy about that, and it's worth having it in the minutes.
Okay, so we pulled E, but items A, B, C, and D on the consent calendar. Do I have a motion?
Sure, I'll move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion second.
With an amendment of,
With the following amendment.
yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Item E.
I just wanted to know whether the money was in the budget to do this service.
I don't believe so.
In other words, what I'm trying to do is hold the budget down, and I hate to put you on the spot like this.
It's okay, I would have to.
So it says under fiscal impact that there are sufficient funds available in fiscal year 17-18, Fund 503, 5032, 2061.
And that's for the, that's out of the water fund?
Yes.
Okay, so there's money in the water fund in order to pay for this, for 30,000 for it. Or it could be more, but not to exceed 30,000.
And my question, this is in addition to the contract that we authorized
Yes.
a meeting or
Yes.
two ago?
Yes, so we authorized a contract for the general engineering services. Basically, we renewed the contract that we had in effect last year. Beyond that, of our various projects that we have to send out for contract, we spread them out amongst different engineers. And so this is one that it was more cost-effective to go with LACO.
Yes, Larry, it is budgeted.
Okay. That's my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Do I have any further discussion? Anybody else?
I guess I just want a little bit of clarification, because I was very on the line when we did the other one. We also have on our agenda approving the use of the Elias well as part of the regular water availability, not only for emergency. And the argument was that we need to have a second well in the vicinity there of Elias to basically to address what would happen if we had no access to reservoir water if the main went out or whatever.
Right.
So that's the reason we're investing more money in a second well, is to, I just wanted-
Okay, so this is for the test well. And we have to do hydrogeology investigation on it as part of determining if it's viable or not. The reason for looking at a second well in our system is so that we're not drawing from one well only. We would spread it out. It's strictly for the purpose of redundancy in our system. This is not for any sort of growth inducement. This is strictly to address vulnerabilities with having one source of water at our reservoir. If we had a seismic event, if we had a water quality issue, things of that nature that would, we wouldn't have a second source to go to. And
we would have the Elias if we approve that item on the agenda, but you're saying that's not enough to supply the whole city.
if we had to go to it alone, no. Right now, the approach that we want to take is to use it for full-time production to offset what we're taking from the reservoir. But in the event that we would have to solely use well water to supply the entire town, that well itself would not do the job.
So the way I understood it, at least the Elias well discussion, and I'm assuming this is kind of goes part and part of it, when we get the algae issues there, we can introduce this water into the system.
Right.
Is that?
Which is particularly important in the summer months. Not only with algae potential issues, but also with energy consumption. It's a better quality water, lower cost to treat. And so, we want to have a combination of both to use in the system and run the well during the daytime. Use the reservoir water at nighttime. I think I have that in the right order, which substantially lowers our cost. But again, if we lost the surface water altogether because of some issue, then we need more than just the Elias well to provide water to the community, just to meet the current needs.
But that's not what E is about. E is about checking to make sure that the test well checks out the way that we want it to check out. And there's another item down the line that talks about what you're talking about.
Well, we already approved it, I think, at last meeting, the one that was basically
Okay.
doing
That's
the,
correct.
doing the
Yeah.
work.
Anyhow,
This is the
I'm just,
testing.
I'm just saying that I just wanted to know whether this was budgeted. That's the main thing I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion on?
I so move.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, call for the vote, Kathy.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes.
Ornstein?
Yep.
Bansky?
Yes.
Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. All right, information reports. Let's see here.
You're staying busy, John.
Yeah. And item 6, right to appeal. Persons who are dissatisfied with the decisions of the city council may have the right to review of that decision by a court. The city has adopted section 1094.6 of the Code of Civil Procedure, which generally limits to 90 days the time within which decisions of the city boards and agencies may be judicially challenged. Item 7, City Council, all commissions and agencies, the Willits City Council meets concurrently as the Willits City Planning Commission and the City of Willits successor agency, nothing there. Item 8, City Manager reports and recommendations, verbal reports.
Yes, so we did pull the item 8A that we had planned for tonight's agenda, just because there's some more work to be done on that, so we'll be bringing that back at the next council meeting. So as far as other reports, the first thing I wanted to bring up is last November, we lost Lynn Kendley, Chamber of Commerce Director, and since that time, we've been pondering ideas to honor her somewhere in town, and we had thought about, planting a tree, for example. But recently, a better idea has surfaced, and I want to thank Kathy for that. We are looking at putting a bench with Lynn's name on it. We'd like to put it on that little triangular piece of property that's by J.D. Red House. It would entail cementing that in and then, bolting the bench down and having, the bench itself will have a horse on it and her name and the dates, the year that she was born and the year she passed, and then a little plaque next to it that would recognize the donors for this project. So it is city property where it's not like we have to accept property from somebody else or give property to somebody else. We just simply want to use that little piece of property for this bench. And would like to get consensus from the 5 of you that you're okay with that.
And it would be funded by donations?
Yes.
Sure.
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay. Good. Do you want to say anything further about that? Okay.
We need a vote on that.
Do we need to vote?
No.
It's consensus, right, so
Yeah.
I think there's,
Okay, then I wanted to talk about trees again. First of all, the cork oak seedlings over at the high school, there was a lot of back and forth between the city, the school district, Caltrans, and Dave Watts about what to do with those seedlings and whether to keep them there or replant them somewhere else, and what would the likelihood be of them surviving. Ultimately, the decision was made between these 4 parties to remove the seedlings from the high school and replant them over at Bechtel Grove Middle School. There's a high likelihood that they won't survive, but we're hoping that they will. It was just a better location for them. So every effort's going to be made for their success. So I wanted to let you know about that. Also, Caltrans, and I think I previously mentioned this, they have committed to providing 4 new cork oak trees. I understand they're not easy to find, but they have found 4 in the 24-inch boxes, so they're pretty substantial size. And the plan is to get those planted next month. We have not yet identified all 4 locations. One will be at the high school for sure, but we're still discussing 3 other locations for those. And then, in keeping with the topic of trees, I wanted to remind you that this Friday on August 11th, 8/11, PG&E and the city will be holding a tree planting ceremony across the street at City Park. The trees were acquired with funds that PG&E granted to us for those, but they picked that date to coincide with the 811 safe digging program, and so they will do a demonstration of that as well. And so I'm hoping to see
What time?
10 a.m. And I'm hoping to see all of you out there for a photo op.
I'll be
Okay.
there.
Okay. The Willits High School sidewalk project that is currently underway, that was scheduled for completion before school opens on the 21st. However, there's been a delay with that due to some utility work that has to be done. So starting on the 21st, they're going to be switching to night work for that to be completed the following week. I think August 29th is when they are hoping to have that done. And it was just a situation that, you know, you have different agencies with different roles in such a project, and everybody's working as quickly as they can, but that's the current status of that. Let's see, Airport Day is going to be on September 23rd. I think that you previously saw a flyer get circulated around, but for all of you, I believe it's 10 a.m. Oh, I have the flyer right here. 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. At the airport, of course, and Lions Club is helping host this. And there's going to be airplane rides and helicopter rides. So, and it's a free event. So hopefully everybody.
What was the September 20th?
September 23rd. It's a Saturday. Then I wanted to report that the recruiter who is recruiting for, Bob Murray and Associates, is handling the recruitment for my position, and the lead recruiter on that project was out last week visiting for a couple of days and met with all 5 of the council members and staff and some community members, and I will tell you he heard very consistently the same thing from everyone about what the priorities are here in Willits and what people want to see in their next city manager. So that was, you know, including, I had the first meeting with them, so everything was pretty consistent. Also wanted to let you know that REMF has a new general manager. She'll be starting in September. Her name is Amy Northam, and I will be meeting her the end of the month for a special meeting. And then lastly, yes, all of you are aware that Susie has accepted a job elsewhere, and so she will start that new job the end of next month. And I've already reached out to a number of sources to line up an interim finance director, because it's too short of a period of time to do a recruitment and get somebody on board by the end of next month. So I'm hoping we can have somebody on board by November 1st, thereabouts. And in the meanwhile, we're looking to get an interim finance director. That's a wrap.
There was something said, and I don't know whether it was this month or next month or whatever, about that you and somebody in the Caltrans and the staff are going to meet about the trees on Main Street. Did that happen?
It's happening next week, and I don't have a date yet. We're playing telephone tag to nail that down.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. You may or may not know the answer, but I see that there's these double dump trucks parked at the hotel on Bechtel Road. They were there when, you know, the major construction, the earth movement was going on for the freeway. And I'm just wondering if, that's a lot, you know, it's a lot of presence there. I'm wondering, is there a lot of dirt being moved somewhere?
You know, I don't know. I'd have to check into that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll find out.
thank you.
And
I just want to comment that I'm really sorry to see Susie leave. She's been a wonderful finance director, and it's going to be hard to replace you. So
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have other opportunities to say that, but just wanted to put that in.
And City Clerk, do you have anything?
Yes, I would like to thank all of you for allowing me to move forward with this project for Lynn. It's gonna turn out beautiful when we get it all done. I'm really excited about it. Got notification from the chamber today. They have put up a large donation for this project. So we'll get the okay hopefully by Friday to the company that's doing the bench for us, and we'll move forward. I'm hoping to have it done by the end of September. They said it would take about 4 weeks to get the bench done and then another week to ship it. So I'm looking at having some kind of dedication by the end of September.
Jim, do you have anything?
No.
Human Resources.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I wanted to thank everybody who came out, participated either through blood donations or their time. I believe that we had a very successful drive. We had over 60 pints of blood donated. We also had 4 individuals who signed up for the bone marrow registry. So we had business owners, we had visitors, we had city residents, we had employees. We also had some of the jury members that were over at the trial. And we also had some wonderful folks from Fort Bragg that came over, the PD, that represented the PD and the administration. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. It was quite successful. Thanks.
Thank you for putting that together.
And thank you to
Susan?
Karen for all her hard work and putting that together. It looked great when we came over there, and everybody who walked through the door to donate blood, she had a really good system going on and really made people feel special, so good job.
Susie?
I just wanted to let everyone know that the Finance Committee meeting has been changed, and the new date is August 24th at 10 a.m.
Thank you, and that was because of me, and I appreciate everybody accommodating. And Dusty?
Can we take up the 2 items first before the verbal reports?
Oh, okay. Item C.
So the first item is to adopt a resolution declaring acceptance of an FAA grant offer for airport improvement, for the airport improvement program, a project that entails runway rehab and seal coat and crack seal, including thresholds shift and relocate the PAPI, which is a lighting system. And that's a $94,000 project. And then the second part of this grant-funded project, is to install an AWAS system, which is a...
Automatic weather observations.
Thank you. Why I couldn't remember that in the moment is beyond me.
You had it last time.
I know.
You didn't, so.
And that's going to be a huge benefit to our pilots. And we're just very happy that the FAA has agreed to fund these improvements. So per the terms of the grant offer, the FAA contributes 90% of the project cost. The city then picks up 10%, but then we get to turn around and apply for Caltrans aviation funding. And so Caltrans will pick up 4.5% of that 10%, which means we'll pick up 5.5%. So our portion would be $77,921 and change, which we had already budgeted.
Okay, that was the... So, do I have a motion on the resolution?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The city's portion is a little over $7,900, and I was wondering if REACH might be interested in participating to some degree. Now, obviously, the runway portion of it is, they don't use the runway, but this all-weather thing sounds like it's something that could benefit them.
It absolutely will, and they have been very interested in assisting us with this. But because we have the grant funding available,
Okay.
There wasn't really a need for them to do that. Also, we're going to be, you might want to explain it better, or you can explain it better than I could, because you nailed it in the...
I doubt it. But as far as the local in-kind match, we're going to be doing that with staff time, and then in the end, we'll probably actually be gaining money off of it, because it's going to take us more than the $7,000 in staff time to work on the grant. So we'll actually get paid the administrative costs beyond the local match, and in a sense, make money off of it.
Thanks.
Okay, so the $50,000 that's gonna be used for this weather thing, station, I guess?
Weather thing, yes.
The weather thing, that's the technical term.
Right.
Okay, I mean, I guess I'm always trying to look for somebody else to pay some of our bills if they can.
Well, they are.
Especially if they get the benefit. You know, especially if they get the benefit.
That's a good idea, and I think we've done that in this situation already.
Okay.
The
Okay,
whole point is we're not spending our money.
okay.
It's a grant, and we're
Well,
gonna
we
come
kind of
out.
are, we are with staff time, but it's not a big deal.
Except that we're getting reimbursed, we're actually gonna come
Some
out
of it.
better. Yeah.
Well, and this is staff time that you're already paying.
Okay, just, you know, just trying to,
All right, do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Okay, second, all right. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Public comment?
Oh, thank you. And at this point, anybody from the public that would like to speak to this? Okay, hearing none, thank you, Jim. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. And now, C2.
All right, John, you want to come up for this? So this is a budget amendment request for ADA improvements to the parking lots here at City Hall, the main parking lot and the side parking lot. And this is something for the public's awareness that we had discussed in a prior closed session when there was a threat of litigation if we didn't make improvements. And so the council did authorize that we go ahead with this project. But there was somehow it didn't make its way into the adopted budget. And I think what may have happened is we had taken out ADA improvements kind of as a whole to look for other funding, but this project was already committed, and so there wasn't that distinction at the time.
Okay.
Good explanation.
So essentially, we've spent the money, I need authorization to write the checks.
So just for the heck of it, what happens if we don't approve this?
Get sued by the contractor.
Okay.
To start off with, and the next time I ask them for a favor, they're probably going to say no.
Okay, no, just, you know, it's a legitimate question, just wanted to know. All right, I'll make a motion that we make the budget amendment as requested.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote.
Public
Aye.
comment?
Oh, thank you. Sorry. Anybody from the public that would like to speak to this?
Closing the public hearing?
Yeah.
I know we've been very uncomfortable with our budget deficit, and so that factors into our concerns, but we had to do this, and we knew we had to do it. I'm sorry it didn't get into the budget, because it would have been better to be realistic about the fact we had to do it. But I certainly think we not only had to do it, but we've done it, and we have to pay for it. So I'm in favor of it.
Well, it's a good recap match. We had to do it. So, all right. Hearing nothing from the public, and motion in a second, and no further discussion. All those in favor, roll call.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes?
Ornstein?
Yeah.
Stransky?
Yes.
Councilmember Mayor Gonzalez?
Yes. Oh, now Dusty, we're going to finish up.
The
And
rest of your report.
Just a few quick updates. Had an MCOG TAC meeting today, discussed some new state funding pools and opportunities, and also various grant opportunities as well. So we'll be working with MCOG to follow up on those and try to get some funding for various Willits projects. Due to some SB1 ATP augmentation funding, we were able to resubmit, well actually update and resubmit our Rails to Trails grants. So we're looking to compete again with other projects and seek fundings for that important project. Again, that's a trail from, multi-user trail from, I think East Side Road, close to the new hospital, all the way to Commercial Street. And then feverishly working on the cannabis ordinance and the supporting environmental documentation. There was a memo provided to you at the previous meeting that identified September 13 as the goal to bring this matter back to council for consideration. And we are on time to.
August.
On
September.
yeah, to meet that date. So I wanted to share that quick update with you as well. And I also did hear the comment from Mr. Filari earlier, so I'll be meeting with our fire chief hopefully tomorrow to discuss that further and possibly come up with some alternative ideas for you guys to consider.
Don't go away.
Okay.
This is the opportunity that I have.
I'm sorry.
What?
Madge had her hand up.
No, I think.
Oh, okay, you had your hand up, so okay, go ahead.
I think we both raised.
Yeah.
Go ahead, ladies first.
I just had a quick question. Were you able to explore the idea that I had mentioned outside of council about addressing the trimming issue?
The loitering potential issue, which is a real potential issue, yeah. We have inserted some language in the draft ordinance that essentially requires them to come up with a plan for dealing with that situation should arise as part of their security plan. With dispensaries in particular, probably a stronger opportunity for people to be loitering outside of a dispensary and partaking of their medication. That's a concern that we have. We've actually asked for the dispensary situation specifically that they actually hire and identify a staff person to thwart that. And then also, I believe, as with any other business in the community, there's an opportunity, I think, to provide permission to the to law enforcement to actually be able to come onto the property and also discourage loitering. Yeah, that's my understanding.
Okay, so Priya's question just inspired a second question that I have as well. Going with the loitering thing is smoking in public places. And there are certain places in this town where people hang out and smoke marijuana. And I was wondering, and there are state laws against public smoking. Is any of that being incorporated into this ordinance?
There isn't anything in the current draft ordinance that talks to the notion of prohibiting smoking of cannabis within a certain distance, similar to what you see for tobacco regulations. Although I believe that the state has included some language that maybe is similar to the tobacco restriction, where you can't smoke within 1,000 feet of certain other types of uses. So certainly state rules would apply to us as well.
Okay, I mean,
but it's not essentially a land use issue that might fall in an ordinance. That would probably be a separate matter to take up at a different ordinance or resolution. But
introducing that at this point could muddy up the water, but I just want to put it on the table to make sure we address it at some point in time. But the other question that I had is, we've been discussing this thing for like 2 years, and we sort of skirted around the financial aspects of it. We haven't talked about fees. We haven't really talked about how much revenue the city can expect. But there is an implication with all of the parts of the ordinance that there's going to be an increased need for enforcement presence, whether it's code enforcement or police. And that's going to cost us some money. And if we're going to be looking at this ordinance to possibly adopt it next month, it would be real helpful if we could have some kind of ballpark numbers to see how we're going to pay for what we need to pay for. And I understand that, it's going to be hard for you to come up with numbers where you are right now, but I think we need to make an effort to kind of put some sense into it. Are we putting ourselves in a position, aside from whether or not it's a good idea to regulate the activity, are we putting ourselves in the position where we can go broke trying to enforce it? Or on the other side of the coin, if we don't enforce it, what's going to happen then? What's that going to look like? So I think it would be real helpful if we could come up with some kind of numbers.
And Dusty, maybe along with what Ron is saying there, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but let's assume we didn't pass an ordinance, we would still have those same issues as far as whether or not we
so let's assume we said we didn't want to pass anything, that we would still have the issues of folks that John's already dealing with folks growing in violation of our current ordinance. We'd still have issues of businesses springing up that weren't permitted. So that would exist regardless of whether we go through with this ordinance or not.
Right, to a certain extent, you're still gonna have those code enforcement issues, whether or not we have a cannabis ordinance or.
The difference with the cannabis ordinance would be on.
Yeah, and just in the general term, I mean, as far as application and inspections go, we're looking, and essentially legally, we're obligated to do cost recovery. So it might just be a matter of tracking staff time and processing individual applications, and then, passing that buck on to the applicant. There's also an opportunity to hire on, consultants to help process those applications as well, and again, pass that buck, penny, to the penny onto the applicant. Also might be that the council anticipates having to hire a couple extra bodies within the community development department or otherwise to help deal with the increased workload because of the new cannabis ordinance, and then setting actually standard fees based on that anticipated cost. I think we've heard well, let's see what type of applications we get in and then sort of respond retroactively to that versus sort of the proactive of, yeah, we know we need to staff up. And all I can say at this point is I know we're going to have a number of applications. There's a lot of people discussing, wanting to submit applications, but until the day actually happens, I guess you don't really know. But the way we have it set up, hopefully we'll be able to process them in a fairly timely fashion.
Okay, but we're not just talking about processing applications, we're talking about the ongoing expenses. And maybe this is something that the city manager would be involved with, because this is an overall thing that gets a little bit out of your bailiwick, but this is going to be happening after you're finished, processing the applications. You're done with that, but then, the code enforcement and the police and whoever else are going to be
and
left.
our department.
Exactly.
Yeah, I will be part of inspection requirements
Exactly.
as well.
So those are the costs that we have to recover.
So Dusty, Larry had a question.
I'm really concerned about the enforcement part of it, because I think that is going to be a big part of it, and I don't see that John has the time or the energy to keep up with all of that. And I'm not saying anything about your energy, but I'm just saying that you won't be able to handle all of the things. And I agree with Ron, this is going to be a big thing, and we want to be able to keep control of it.
So I guess the bottom line with that is we need to see some numbers, even if they're estimates, how much is this effort going to cost? And what kind of revenue can we expect to offset these costs? And actually, it's like anything else. If we're going to do a contract for a road project or, building a water plant or whatever, we always have this analysis that we're going to spend this kind of money, but in the long run, it's going to do this for us. And I think we need the same kind of analysis for this. How's that for another job?
Well,
My only thought is that if we're talking about cost recovery, aren't we really talking about a penny for a penny? So if this is what it's going to cost us, this is what they're going to pay. So there is no money coming out of the general fund per se, because it's all cost recovery.
Mhm.
So they could spend time putting together these reports for us, but what will they really mean?
Yeah, and I think part of it too is, like I was trying to emphasize, that along those same lines, if John Doe opens up a business and because he's not following our rules, and John and our city attorney have to work together to get him in compliance or deal with issues like folks hanging around doing things they're not supposed to, I think that's going to be covered in cost recovery. I don't know whether it's fair to have Dusty come up with a number for, right now there's probably, for the sake of argument, 10 people out there growing marijuana that shouldn't be growing it in town, out in the open in violation of our current ordinance, and that it's going to be a little different for him to quantify in relation to our ordinance, because that's something that's already still and probably will continue to happen. I think in relation to our ordinance, I think cost recovery will cover the issues, like you said, penny for penny, you know.
Yeah, because we're not doing a flat rate,
Yeah.
we're doing actual cost.
So what you're saying is that.
Well, hold on.
Adrian has, I do.
Lost my thought.
So what you're saying is it's inevitable that no matter how we structure the rate system, this is going to wind up costing the city money.
Well, not the
That's not
ordinance
true.
per se, I think that the activities, there's always gonna be folks like, that are going to do things they're
Well, I
not supposed to
understand
be
that, so
doing.
where are we going to get the money from to deal with these issues?
Well, the issues directly related to the ordinance and permitting these businesses hopefully will be, as Sabrina pointed out, if it's costing us money in enforcement or whatever other consultants we need to bring on board for them, where we shouldn't be out of pocket in the general fund, it should be paid by the applicants.
But again, I'm not hearing an answer to the question. I mean, we're going to have ongoing costs, that's known, and you already mentioned, even if we do not approve a marijuana ordinance, we're still going to have ongoing enforcement costs.
So you're at, Ron, I'm trying to grasp what you're saying. So we're focusing, Jerry and I are talking about the initial application fee, and it sounds like what you're talking about is beyond the application fee, the ongoing regulating
Well, of
of this
course,
particular
yeah,
ordinance.
yeah.
That's specifically what you're talking about.
Exactly. I mean, like I'm saying, there's the application fee, but there's also the annual fees and the costs and the excise taxes, you know, all these revenue streams that we have not been discussing at all.
Well, I think
And-
those are
and which
separate
is,
discussions.
of course it's separate, but it's not. It's part of this whole thing. And yeah, I get that we have not discussed it because we still have to get the structure. We have to define the building before we can put a price tag on it. But we do know that there will be a cost ongoing after we either approve or disapprove, you know, any kind of marijuana activity in this town. There will be an annual ongoing cost for eternity. How are we going to pay for that?
I think the same way you recoup your costs through code enforcement activities for various violations, right? You have a system set up where fines start accruing sometimes on a daily basis. You have a third party. Jim, if you want to maybe explain.
Well, I'm not looking for an answer right
No,
now.
I'm concerned that this is not an item that's on our agenda.
Well, this is what I'm saying, and the only reason I threw this out, because I know it's not agenda, I wanted to put it on the table for consideration. I don't expect an answer tonight, because it's more, you know, aside from the fact that it's not agendized, it's also a complicated subject. But all of this stuff needs to be considered, and we really haven't been, and I'm afraid that next month, we're gonna have an ordinance in front of us, we're either going to adopt it or we're not going to adopt it. And whatever we do or don't do, we're going to be left with a very big bill every year going into the end of life.
So I'll just finish by saying I'll anticipate having that discussion as part of the cannabis ordinance consideration at the September 13th meeting. And I would just, again, reiterate for clarity, you know, the application fees and the inspection fees, you know, those are about recovering the city's cost for providing that service, that administrative, that time. I would anticipate that there might be something that goes to the voter of Willits that has to do with the square footage tax or a sales tax or something, and that would be where the city would potentially, just with like an excise tax on gasoline sales, where we would recover, you know, funds beyond what our, you know, cost of staff time is for doing that. And you're not using application fees to get money beyond what's required of you to provide the service.
And we're talking about up to 3 dispensaries, right?
Yeah.
We're limiting the number of dispensaries.
The current draft
And
ordinance limits that.
I anticipate that the biggest code enforcement issues are with that type of a business operation. There's only going to be 3 of them. And so we'll have the ability to revoke a license, to not renew a license, to pursue code enforcement if necessary. So.
No, actually, you're not exactly right. The biggest code enforcement issue is not going to be the licensed businesses that don't follow the rules is gonna be everybody else who didn't get a license. And they're the ones we're gonna have to go after, because if we don't go after them, then the guys who are foolish enough to put down a license fee and to go through the motions, they're gonna feel like fools. What the hell would I do this for if this guy's able to do this without any kind of, punishment or anything?
There are punishments available for failure to get permits and all of that, and I think that's what Dusty was referring to, for anything right now. And, and there isn't anything we can legislate to keep people from breaking the law, except the whatever criminal statutes and the violation statutes that we have. The city provides police protection for everybody in the city, and we already have a bunch of bars that operate, and they have a little bit more police protection responsibilities than do schools or residences, but that's part of doing business, and it isn't fair to expect that new businesses are going to pay more than everybody else.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, Madge, with bars, and I think we're writing in our ordinance basically a lot of the same remedies you have with bars for revocation of licenses, so. But yeah, I mean, Dusty, if you can explore to the best of your ability for those items that we can control, and obviously those items that are out there that may be matters of concern, that I think what you're getting at, Ron, and that we may have to come up with ordinances in the future to address issues that we haven't crept up or may creep up as a result, so.
Well, it's not ordinances. I mean, there's enough ordinances in place to do this thing. It's the enforcement. And we know that we're gonna have to hire more code enforcement officers, we're gonna have to hire more police officers because of this increased activity. And if we don't stay on top of it, it's gonna get out of control, just like it did 10 years ago.
So, Adrian.
So I hear what you're saying, and you had mentioned this to me the other day. We need to get this ordinance finished to know what we're looking at. We need to know what is going to be adopted before we can figure out what the code enforcement should look like, what sources of funding we're going to have or need to create to cover our costs. And so it's not being ignored, but we need to take care of the step first. And I also wanted to say that I think that we really need to make the distinction between the underground economy that we've been dealing with all these years and this emerging legitimate business model. I just don't think that we're going to have the code enforcement issues with these businesses that we have, like we've been dealing with all of these years. But, experience will tell us one way or the other, and we'll have to address those things accordingly.
And I think we'll probably hear from our legal businesses that there are folks out there in the community operating under the radar that we should be looking at that point. And so I think it's an emerging, subject that as every city in the state starts dealing with it, that it's going to creep up, and we're probably going to learn more from our fellow counties and cities out there. So at this point, John, do you have anything? Unless Dusty, did you have anything?
Good evening, and from a code, just to back up to the last subject briefly, from a code enforcement standpoint, the way I see this is when all the permits have been issued and the businesses are up and running, I'll have a list, and I'll have addresses, I'll know where all these people are and what they're doing. Compare that to driving around town, finding an outdoor illegal backyard pot grow about 2 or 3 times a day. At this point, I'm starting to find several a week, and I expect that to become several a day. What I hear is kind of a persistent characterization of the cannabis businesses as this quasi-illegal activity we've got to pay more attention to, and My feeling is, these are people that they're either currently legitimate business people, or they're people that are coming out of the dark into the light to become legitimate business people. And I don't think these are the people we're gonna have problems with. I think honestly, when you compare the code enforcement process that goes along with this industry to what's going on out there in the community in terms of, well, I don't like your regulation, I don't like your ordinance, so I'm just going to violate it. There's a much bigger code enforcement issue with that than I think we'll ever see with these legitimate cannabis businesses. That being said, on with the show. Building department, pretty much conventional stuff, a lot of remodeling going on. Not much big. To address Ron's question about the slam bangers over at the Lark Motel, there is a large volume haul going off of Robert Drive right now. Basically consisting of taking material that had been stockpiled over the years out there off the property so that the project can be built.
So they're just taking it away to somewhere else, is that?
Yeah, they have to take it off the site to build the project.
And what's going there? I mean,
A mini storage project.
Okay, and that's over by solid waste, correct?
The next street over from
Right.
solid waste, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that might explain.
Yeah.
I know Duran Construction has got some of their own vehicles, they've got some contract vehicles in town to do this hauling. So that might, I haven't checked those vehicles specifically, but that's the big haul that's going on that I know about.
Okay, thank you.
Code enforcement, been fairly busy, getting busier. It's that time of year again, and folks need to understand that we still have the same ordinance in place that we've always had that prohibits outdoor cultivation of marijuana, period. You can grow your 6 plants indoors with our blessing, but you can't grow any plants outdoors. That's just the way it is. But what's happening is, like I just said, I'm finding a few a week, and it's ramping up. And so we're going to go into a time where the code enforcement officer is going to be spending a lot of time on marijuana cultivation, and unfortunately, it's all the kind of stuff that we've gone through, and for the most part, we've gone through it with the same people over and over again. So we're just going back into another version of the same thing.
So last year, you closed down a fairly big grow, and that was a process, as I recall, it took several weeks to go through the courts.
Actually months, but yeah.
Okay. These small ones, I mean, maybe we shouldn't talk about this in public, I don't know, but what are you going to do about them? You can't go through the same process that you did for the other one for each one, can you?
That's exactly what I do.
Huh.
And it depends on how far they push me as to how far I push them. But, you know, the bottom line is, if I have to obtain warrants and eradicate the plants, that's what I'll do.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
I think we should continue to reiterate to the public through media that outdoor growing of any plants is not legal in the city. And as John just said, with our blessing, go ahead and grow your 6 plants indoors, just don't grow them outdoors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we've not taken a stand against marijuana, we've taken a stand against the nuisance that growing it outdoors creates. I just want to let people know that, you know, explaining the virtues of marijuana to me while I'm standing there looking at your grow in your backyard is not going to be very helpful.
It has nothing to do with the virtue of cannabis.
I don't care. One good thing to announce, our PV solar system is up and running on the roof and is currently supplying the power we need to run our office machines during the day.
It's hooked into the grid?
It's operational right now. It's hooked into the grid. I'm doing the paperwork right now with PG&E so that they actually start buying our surplus.
Very cool.
So we should see a savings of, I'm trying to remember, 30,000 a year, I'm thinking.
They'll force me.
No, I'm sorry, not that much.
Please.
Not that much, because this isn't a full system.
I'd be totally amazed and ecstatic if that were the case.
Yeah.
And John, that was thanks to,
North Bay Solar, John Takis, who actually is
My next door neighbor.
Councilman Ornstein's next door neighbor.
And he's establishing his business in town. He worked in Sonoma County up until now, is trying to move it up here.
And then one last thing, if you're in and out of City Hall on a regular basis in the next couple of weeks, you're gonna see an extra guy running around the building working on doors. He's here to bring our doors into compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And quite frankly, a lot of this equipment is 50 or more years old and it hasn't been touched in all of that time, so we got some work in front of us.
Thank you, John.
John, mailbox.
The mailbox?
Oh, yeah, we have a new mail/drop box on the outside here. It's approximately 3 feet north of the old one.
This is for our bills, right?
Yeah, it's for your water bills, and it actually doubles as our mailbox now, too.
Post office has made it mandatory for us to have a box outside so that they can deliver on Friday and Saturday now. So we have to get a larger box.
Oh, that's that big thing that's sitting on the ground next to the empty post.
That's exactly what it is. Yes, now I have to apologize to the general public that got used to driving up and putting their water bill in the box. You'll no longer be able to do that. You're going to have to get out of your car. And it really had to do with that we had to relocate this thing once again for ADA access. The new mailbox is accessible. You can easily deliver your water bill from your wheelchair now.
Thank you, John. So item D, you want to introduce it?
Yeah, so this is a discussion and possible approval of full-time production of the Elias replacement well to supplement the city's surface water supply. And we have Rod Wilburn here to present the item, our former city engineer and now contracted city engineer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Good to see you again.
It's very nice to be back. Seems like it's been a long time, but I was thinking back, I think it's only been just over a year. It seems like much longer than that. But I'm very pleased to be able to present this tonight. I believe there was discussion at the last council meeting on this item, or a couple council meetings ago. The idea is to take the Elias well and turn it into a full-time production well. This is something near and dear to me, having been there when the project was completed about 18 months ago, maybe close to 2 years, almost 2 years now. Knowing the capabilities, and once it was turned on and seeing the groundwater treatment plant go into production and be able to produce 330 gallons per minute of very good, very clean drinking water. So Andrea and I worked on putting this together and doing some research. Andrea worked really hard on finding some historical data on the aquifer and the amount of water that's out there. And just to highlight the staff report here, the agenda summary, there's an abundance of water in the aquifer, and the amount of water that would be used out of the Elias well is nominal when you look at the total volume. Talking about the difference between 400 acre feet versus sometimes some estimated 90,000 acre feet, which is like, I did the conversion, that's like 29 billion gallons of water out there. So it does present some other benefits, and I think one of the most important benefits is it provides redundancy and it provides backup to the surface water, because the surface water is obviously, if you get into drought conditions, you don't have the surface water a couple years ago, but there's also a single transmission line coming from the surface water treatment facility to town. So any number of things could happen to that single transmission line, which would compromise the city's water supply, whether it be seismic, fire, vandalism, who knows, or some natural occurring slide event. So there's that. There's the improved water quality during the winter, or excuse me, during the summer, when you're talking about colder water versus the warmer water in the reservoirs. No organic material, so no disinfection byproducts. You know, I stood right here and we had to deal with disinfection byproducts in the past, and how the surface water during the drought and the algae blooms in the reservoirs create issues for the treatment facility. So when you chlorinate, you end up with disinfection byproducts in your distribution system. So that would be eliminated, not necessarily eliminated because you'd be looking at a combination of surface water and groundwater, but that would definitely help mitigate or remedy that situation. So talk about the greater flexibility with respect to reservoir management, being able to keep the water deeper and cooler during the summer while relying on groundwater, lower operational costs because of the difference in the size of the pumps. You're talking about 30 horsepower motor at the Elias well versus the 100 horsepower pumping up at the treatment facility. So overall, this, to me, it's a very simple, and it's really like, this is a benefit to the community, and my recommendation that it be used to the fullest extent possible.
Any questions?
Yeah, I already mentioned to Adrian that I thought this staff report was very well presented. Thank you very much for, really going through all those benefits and how it would be used and so forth. It really helped clarify it a lot. The one question I just realized I hadn't asked is, we had never gone through a CEQA review because the work was done under an emergency provision. And are we certifying a no impact thing? I mean, we haven't ever certified a CEQA review on this, have we?
Do you want to speak to that?
So notice of exemption was filed in May, and it talks about that on May 10th. Notice of exemption for this project. So in lengthy discussions with our senior planners about what the CEQA analysis would be, their opinion was, you've already completed the work, because the well was just one part of the project. The major impacts, I would think, were the thousands of feet of water line installed, the groundwater treatment plant, because of the creek crossing and those types of activities. Right now, we're just talking about changing the use of the well itself. So with there being no regulatory body or no regulatory agency for groundwater, there's really nothing to analyze. There's no structure. There's no project, because there's no agency that you're going to follow their guidelines on how to manage the groundwater. Since it's under no one's jurisdiction, you have it. I don't think it relieves the city. Doesn't relieve the city of the duty to monitor activities and be good neighbors with when you talk about what the impacts are, and as you realize as you go through the process, it just turns into, you end up back at the same place if you.
Well,
does that make sense? It's
well,
like
it does, but I guess I should ask Jim too. We went ahead with a project which was not just the well, but the pipeline and the treatment facility for that well, under the duress of an emergency.
Right.
So it was at least temporarily exempt from CEQA. Don't we, the city council, have to still issue some kind of CEQA compliance,
Well, what I understand is that Rod and Dusty, I think, worked together in the preparation of a notice of exemption that was filed.
Mm-hmm.
and that it determined that the project was exempt from CEQA because it was not going to result in any further growth. It was not a growth-inducing project, and that basically the installation of the well and the pipeline were all done under the as an emergency basis, and so I think
Anything that did have an environmental impact was already done as an emergency, basically.
So my understanding is there's no reason to go back and assess something that's already constructed.
Yeah.
But, and then with respect to growth inducement, we talked about extensively, we calculate the number of connections available to the city based on the storage available within the distribution system. We went through this a couple of years ago, the 3 million gallon tank and the other tanks around town. That's what controls or limits the number of connections.
Mm-hmm.
So once you start changing that storage, then you have the potential to increase the number of connections by providing a separate source that supplements, that just basically takes away from what it's the same watershed, takes away from what you're taking through surface water and supplements that with groundwater. You're not providing an opportunity for future development. So.
I understand that.
No, just to recap, just again, one of the key factors in finding that the project was exempt from CEQA is that it's offsetting surface water supply, that it's not going to be used to induce growth beyond what the general plan environmental documents already evaluated.
Okay, so don't walk away, Dusty.
I don't know why.
Just in case.
Growth inducement, would you explain exactly what that means?
So potentially by bringing on an additional water supply beyond our existing water supply, that could support additional growth beyond what our general plan currently allows and anticipates.
Okay, and that's what CEQA is all about, basically?
CEQA does require you to analyze growth-inducing impacts.
And what does our general plan call for as far as our growth into the future?
A lot of that's carried out through our land use code. So, zoning allows for X amount of development, X amount of housing.
Yeah, but there's a number somewhere, right? That's on file in our plan?
If you look at the general plan EIR, I don't know that it calls out specifically how many structures could be built out, but.
So then how do you define growth inducement or not growth inducement?
Sure, connections could be one factor. I mean, the state basically has a cap on us as to how many hookups we can issue beyond our current supply. If we were going to annex additional properties and we're having to develop additional water supplies, that would kick in CEQA. We'd be looking at potential growth beyond our current property.
But that's what I'm asking, what is our current, I mean, you're implying, and unless I misunderstand, there's the implication that there's a number that exists that is the upper limit for the number of people, units, hookups, whatever.
Yeah, that you would, I guess you could go through the exercise of looking at all, how much land do we have that's zoned for R3, R2, R1, for instance, on the residential side? How many units would we allow, per density limitations on that land, and then come out with a hard number of, based on our current zoning and development restrictions, our land could support X amount of residential units, X amount of commercial or industrial development. And, that would be a hardy exercise to go through. But essentially, through your general plan and your land use code, you've identified, zonings upon all the lands within the city limits that come with their individual development restrictions, and that's your baseline for how much development is permitted under our current general plan, which was evaluated by an EIR.
All right, so apparently we have not gone through that exercise, and we do not know what that number would be.
Well, our current limitations, as far as water goes, is I think we have a response from the state that allows it. I think we have approximately, we can issue about 20% more water hookups beyond our current level, and we do know how many water hookups we've been issued so far within the city.
Adrian wanted to
Jump in if I could.
Please.
So not having it in front of me, I don't know if it's a general plan. I seem to think it is, but if not that, some related document that does. I don't know if it has a hard number, but it did project a certain amount of growth over a period of time that we have not realized. In fact, our population has gone down a little bit. With regard to our water system, we, as Desi mentioned, we can issue 20%, 480 actually, new connections without seeking any change in our current permit. That's quite a lot of development without doing growth inducement.
I guess what I'm saying is this, that, look, I'm on the inside here, I'm part of this thing, and I'm really, really on your side. I'm supporting everything you're doing, but transport myself out there at times. And what I'm hearing is a little disturbing. I mean, I'm not hearing specific things, that here's the number that is our target. And we know that we're nowhere near our target. I mean, for all, is it possible we've already exceeded that limit and that we're going to get a visit from the DEA or whoever, they're going to throw you in jail, or worse, me. And see, the thing that bothers me is I probably watch too much evening news, and I see what goes on around, but it happens. And I see all these other municipalities that do, in my estimation, stupid things. You talk about Flint, Michigan, for example, and you talk about these other small towns or larger cities in California itself that have done things. I think it was just when they released the water from the dam last winter, and it flooded the town because nobody thought to check if the channel is deep enough, that kind of stuff. And I really, really, I really admire and respect the work that you guys do. You do your homework. But when I hear these little, what I detect as kind of missing pieces of information, I get a little worried. And I just really want to make sure we're not overlooking certain things and just using catchphrases to say, well, we're okay because we're okay.
Well, I think we absolutely have the documentation to back up everything that's been stated.
I have a question for both of you. To put it in perspective, it sounds like we're just trading groundwater for surface water depending on the conditions. We're giving ourselves an alternative in case of an emergency, and that was the original plan here. Now, the game changer here would be if instead of bringing the project that you're bringing today, had Rod said, oh yeah, and I'm adding a giant tank over here to increase our capacity, then that would be a game changer, which would then, is that correct, Rod?
That's exactly correct. Like if there were a 2 million gallon tank on bed and bender that was added to this project, then that would definitely be growth inducing because the number of possible connections would go up. So with this project, the number of allowable connections by the state California Division of Drinking Water does not change. That's the bottom line.
And again, I support, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I supported having an alternative source, albeit that we came into this with an emergency, but I like the idea if there was an earthquake or, like you said, a slide or something, having, I think our constituent base out here, our water users are gonna wanna be able to turn the tap on. And I don't think they're gonna care whether it's coming from underground or on the surface. At that point, they're just gonna wanna know that they still have water coming in. And that's what we're hoping to ensure, that we have an adequate water supply.
Correct.
Larry?
Mine is much simpler. How is it going to work when let's say that we don't get any water from the dam, and are the tanks going to have to go empty before the water can flow the other way? Because now it's flowing from up, down, through the tanks to my house. And what happens when you turn on the pump and it tries to go against the flow that's going from the tanks? Is that too simple or too dumb to even ask here?
No, it's a very good question, because it's not necessarily counterintuitive, but the pump is working against 70 PSI at this end of town. So that's why the well itself could pump, I think when we were pumping to the plant, open atmosphere, it was pumping 550 gallons per minute. But when it works against that 70 pounds of pressure, at where it connects to the system, it can only get 330 gallons per minute positive flow into the system. So it's a matter of, that will still fill the respective tanks. It just has to be managed as far as the SCADA and when one feeds the tank versus the other. So does that kind of, that answer your
I
question?
understand. So we
the
have to
ability.
run out of water before that one actually goes to
No,
work.
no. It has enough power with that single 30 horsepower pump out at the well to have positive flow into the system, which will fill that tank, which will fill the tank, the 3 million gallon tank. It's just further away.
Okay.
Well, technically it's not further away. It's probably a wash. It's just elevate. You're changing elevation. You're trading elevation for horsepower.
Okay.
So-
Thank you.
So in other words, when the line from the valley comes into the main line, which I think is right down the street here, correct? When it comes from the groundwater pump into the main line that runs down Commercial Street, is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so when it comes to that point, under normal circumstances, it'll make a right-hand turn and go around in town. But under your scenario, with the water pressure being reduced coming down the hill, it could make a left-hand turn as well and go in.
So basically, you just turn this one off over here that comes
okay.
from the reservoir, and you turn this one on at certain times when the tank drops below a certain point.
So
And
how
it fills that tank.
So how would the water get back to the reservoir?
It doesn't go back to the reservoir.
I mean,
Just
the
to the
tanks.
tank.
Yeah.
Just through this, because and I wish Scott was here so we could talk about the specifics, but it's a supply, the tanks are a supply demand, so it's not a separate line going in. So it's a matter, it fills slowly because it's satisfying the demand of residents while still filling the tank at a slow.
It's entering the system is basically.
Right, so it may not be able to fill it as fast, you may not be able to fill it as fast from the groundwater source as you can from the reservoir, so you have to turn it on sooner.
So, I mean,
So you have to
is it a
start-
circular system? Does the water go around and back into the tank, or does it have to go uphill into the tank?
It has to go uphill into the tank.
Okay.
And the same as Laurel, but there are a couple booster pumps within the system, there are a couple pressure zones, and there are some check valves where it only goes a certain direction, doesn't come back the other direction, so.
Okay, so if the water tank is emptier, the downhill pressure, the static pressure is lower, and the 30 horsepower
yeah.
pump can push uphill
Yeah.
into the tank, as
Yes.
well as going into the system.
Yes.
Right.
Because-
I was just going to give kind of a summary of, from when we started on this path back in 2014 in response to the drought. And, it was at that time an emergency project. I don't think we entered into it envisioning anything further than that. But because it is such a good performing source, well, and good quality water, it's really the Division of Drinking Water that has pushed us to put it into full-time production so that we can offset the surface water, because we have had issues with it, over the years. So, to deliver a better product to our customers and lower the costs overall, definitely feels like a win-win. So that's why this is before you tonight. They, as far as the Division of Drinking Water was concerned, we could have turned this on months ago, but we wanted to wait until we had done our due diligence with all of this information to bring to you and the public.
So Division of Drinking Water, this is a state agency?
Yes.
So that sounds pretty official.
Indeed.
Okay, all right, well, that's an important piece of information.
So I think that was in
It is in
the
Yeah.
last one. When it was permitted for full-time production.
Okay.
They didn't differentiate between emergency or full-time. So it is also a $2 million project that should be put into use.
Absolutely.
Put to use, excuse me.
Is there anybody else up here that has questions? Anybody from the public that would like to speak to this? Okay, I guess bring it back up here. I guess at this point I would entertain a motion to approve the full-time use of the Elias replacement well to supplement the city's surface water supply at the rate established in the source capacity analysis approved by the Division of Drinking Water.
I always like to be entertaining, but you said it first.
Okay.
I'll second it.
No, I'll
Ron's
second
thing.
it. You said it first.
Larry first and Ron second. Any further discussion?
I just have one question. This full-time doesn't necessarily mean that it's on all the time. Like in the winter when we have lots of water in the reservoir, we don't need it necessarily. It doesn't mean it's on all the time. Okay. Just means it's available. Okay.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, roll call?
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Strong?
Yes?
Weinstein?
Yep.
Strand?
Yes.
Mayor Wilks?
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Rod.
All right. City Council and committee reports. League of Cities meets on the 18th. MCOG.
MCOG will meet on the 21st of this month, instead of the 1st.
EDFC.
We have an all-day planning session next Thursday.
MSWA.
MSWA has been having a couple extra meetings. There's been a recruitment for the general manager, and they found a very good candidate and have accepted his proposed compensation package, but the official contract will be next week. So the next meeting is next week.
So you can't reveal who this individual is?
Yeah, Robert Carlson, he's been an employee in the state recycling business for, I think, 15 or 18 years. He's going to be really, really strong on bringing our solid waste up to a very high standard for recycling and reuse and diverting the waste stream. So we're really excited about it. He has administrative experience as well. He has been in Sacramento, but he was very enthusiastic about coming to the county level and being able to actually work on a system instead of just policy. So anyway, we're very excited about it. And he will start work basically September 1st. And the meeting is 2 o'clock this coming Monday, the 14th, in Ukiah.
All right. And MTA.
Hasn't met.
LAFCO met on Monday, and we held a public workshop for the Comcast Community Service District, a public workshop for the City of Fort Bragg Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update, and we discussed some legislative matters. They gave us a status on some future MSR SOI updates. Apparently, we are still in the process of our Sphere of Influence, and I guess they're working with SD on this, so more to come in the future on that. And there is a LAFCO conference I will probably be attending in October, and that's it for LAFCO. And Finance Committee, we are obviously going to meet later in the month. And Water and Wastewater Systems Committee, I think we reported that. Yeah, Revite Ed, I think we reported out at the last meeting, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And both of those last two committees next meet on October 17th.
What's the time? I don't have that on my calendar.
I think the Water and Wastewater Committee will be in the morning, probably 10-ish, and the Revite Ed will likely be 4:30. Okay. October?
What's the date on
October
that again?
17th.
October 17th.
Caltrans, it sounds like there's going to be a meeting next week.
Jen Buck contacted me and wanted to get together and talk about the trees and do a walkabout.
Right, if I'm probably not going to, depending on when it is, I may not be available next week, but I'm sure Larry is going to be there.
I can do it.
Okay.
All right, and if I can, I will be there, but Cannabis hasn't met, and JPA feasibility study has not met, and Museum Advisory Board.
Museum has not met, but I was looking on my calendar to see when the museum Museum is having the gala. Our next meeting is until September 11th, so I'll give you an update at the next meeting.
Okay. Item 11, authorized letter of opposition to SB 649, WESO wireless and small cell telecommunications facility, as amended 7/3/17. I brought this up during League of Cities, and Madge asked for it to be put on. Thank you very much for doing that. So go ahead.
Oh, well, I thought we should weigh in. The League of Cities has already weighed in, and a number of other cities, that this particular legislation preempts a lot of local control over any kind of telecommunications project. It's called small cell, but it actually refers to just about anything, including new poles and new stations, and expands a lot of the preemption of any local controls. So I have some of the talking points I could go through, but I think given that the League of Cities is very strongly opposed to it, that we should also have a letter on file, and that's what this resolution would authorize. So.
That's what we're looking for. Do we need a motion?
So it's not a resolution, it's
It's just
letter of opposition.
authorizing a letter of opposition.
All right, I have a question about this thing here. I'm not opposed to this thing, but I'm just curious. If this bill is not enacted, is there still some measure or some activity or an impetus to put, broadband into this community?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it just
So
means it's
this would not
local control.
nullify that. This would keep the control local. So
Well, our letter of opposition.
right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, what it would do, if it allowed to happen, we would lose our negotiating capability to maybe ask them to provide something to the community, or to keep them from setting a rate, where the state would set a rate where we wouldn't be able to set a rate. They could put things wherever they wanted on our poles.
Including, public property that basically preempt any city control over any of that. So I will move.
It would eliminate the ability to do this.
Yeah, if this bill passed, it would take that existing power that the city has over, controls over that, and fees for use of city property, for example, it would take it all out of the city's hands.
So do I have a motion authorizing me to sign
Yes,
this?
I so move.
And I'll second the
All
motion.
right. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. You guys have it. I will sign it and send it off.
Okay, I have another item I wanted to raise on the council members' recommendations.
Go ahead.
At our previous meeting, we were talking about, now that the city is going to have to pay for water, that the two connections at the Highway 20 park were rather expensive. And after talking to Dave Watts a little bit, and realizing that those new rates are going to kick in September 1st, I raised some concerns about that, and Adrienne didn't cover it in her report, but it sounds like there are some wells that maybe we will want to make use of well water instead of using our city water supply. And the other thing is, I would like to re-raise the question of, at the end of summer, so we're through the tourist season, letting it go dry, and it'll green up again as soon as the rain comes, but rather than continue to use city water and come out of our city budget to irrigate that strip of park. I'm changing my view on that. I'd like us to consider starting to save money and let it go dry starting after September, unless we can do well water.
It's not.
I have two things. First of all, I have been talking to all the people that I know that are involved with the litigation land, and I have yet to be able to find anybody that can tell me who is going to own the land once everything is done and supposedly that Caltrans has moved on.
I believe.
And nobody has been able to show me who's going to own the land, and that's next.
Are you talking about
The
Yeah, the
mid-
valley.
Well, I think it's going to be, I'm trying to think of the name of the land
Mendocino
trust.
County
Yeah.
Resource Conservation.
But do they hold title to it?
Yeah, they're going to hold title. They're going to be
That's
a
my
land.
understanding.
Yeah, after Caltrans has certified that it's all up to standard, and then they
Okay,
take.
but there's got to be a certain amount of plants that are still striving to do that. So it could be 30 years.
It could. It could be a long time.
Okay.
And there's also grazing rights that they will administer. That's-
Okay, okay. And my next thing is that I want to thank Sabrina for the Bechtel Grove Gym plywood and paint and all of that. I've heard some really nice things about it in the community, and I want to congratulate her for taking that on and doing such a nice job. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So there is going to be a reception, and I hope that you all will attend on Friday, August 25th at 5 p.m. Be a reception there at the gymnasium. The project, like any project, you think it's going to take a certain amount of time. I'd hoped it would take 3 weeks, and it's looking like it's turning into a 5-week project with lots of late nights and weekends. But we're just about done with the repairs. We're finishing up the painting. I'm very pleased that Howard Hospital, Sherwood Rancheria, Dave Watts from Sanhedrin Nursery, Warren and Kathleen Lewis have all made contributions to this project. I'm still hoping to receive some more contributions. I have about a $12,000 balance on this project, and I'll be covering the balance myself, provided I don't get any other donors. So if you know anybody who's interested, I took on the project because I really felt like when you want people to make a difference, you have to be the example. And the gym needed repair, and just needed someone to take it on. And for me, it's one of many projects to come, and I'm very pleased to show it to you, and I hope you'll come on Friday, August 25th. It's open to the public. I'll be inviting all those at Willits Unified, the public in general, as well as I would hope that the city would attend, since the gymnasium is co-owned by Willits Unified and the city of Willits. And the name of the gymnasium is sometimes lost. It is the Tom Tilton Gymnasium. So when you walk in it, now that it has a new coat of paint, it clearly says Tom Tilton Gymnasium. And we're hoping that he'll be able to attend. He's been invited as well. Thank you, Larry.
Sabrina, I'd like to apologize ahead of time. I'm actually going to be in Oakland that day, so.
All right.
So
I'll save you a cookie.
I'd rather be at your thing than in Oakland, but, so. Matt, did you have anything?
No, I mentioned the,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know
And,
how
Bob?
the other council members feel about that, or whether it has to be decided by the council or not, maybe not just staff.
I have one more thing. I just wanted to acknowledge that I know that I've been approached by many people in the community expressing concern over their PG&E bill going up this month, and making it very clear that the city of Willits, the city council did not make a decision to go with Sonoma Clean Power, although I support the,
They did.
we had a presentation.
No, the former council voted.
Oh, the former council, okay.
Yeah.
I did not know.
But I
Okay.
think we'll
be very clear.
Sabrina, I think the issue where it's going up, and I've talked to some folks, is not so much that it's going up. In fact, it should have been a cost savings, but the way it was explained to me is some folks' billing cycle changed. So this month, some folks are paying a little extra because there's some PG&E time with Sonoma Power time that isn't.
We'll see how it all works out.
Yeah, so I think
I'm one of
maybe-
those folks whose bill went up significantly.
Yeah, so.
It's not supposed to be more expensive because it's clean power.
Yeah, mine
It's
was
supposed to be
just that.
slightly less.
Yeah, so I
It was
think,
the same. I mean, it was a little confusing because of the changeover,
I'm
so I
happy
want
for
to
you.
wait, I want to wait till the next one to see how
Okay.
it plays
so you might
out.
look at your billing cycle to see what the days changed. And so it's kind of like when you don't get a bill from the city because we
I'm gonna
didn't
go
change
back
your
and look
meter.
at my bill a little bit closer.
But that's what I
so
was
that
explained to me.
When people are asking, yes, and I was under the impression, because I received a presentation, I hadn't realized that the city itself had approved
Yeah, it predates
that.
us, but,
Yeah, okay, I thought that the county had made that decision, so thank you
So-
for the clarification.
and think I had an opportunity to meet with Supervisor Krosky to kind of brief her on my meeting with the new managers of the Wagon Wheel, thank you, and passed on, they do have a program, and I did encourage them to meet with the senior center for rental assistance that they'll be, I guess, rolling out here, but they have it in other places, and so she was happy to hear that, so we chatted a little bit about that. So, and they were encouraged to contact the senior center folks that deal with housing so that they can pass that word out, so. And I was shown at that meeting with the gentleman, they had granted extensions on some of the folks' I guess where they were told to clean up, that they were granting extensions.
Okay.
So, and at this point, no ordinances, any good and welfare? One thing I'll add is, and Adrian, correct me, the Education Foundation.
Garden party
Thank you, garden party.
is on Saturday, August 26th.
Thank you. So,
One other thing, Wilbur, just to reiterate that August 19th and 20th is the Little Lake Blues and Brews, first annual, hopefully, and it is a benefit for the Willits Food Bank. And there's some incredible blues bands, and tickets are available at JD Red House and Main Street Music here locally, and some other places too. Posters are all over the place, so August 19th and 20th, that whole weekend.
all right. And then we have one closed session item, conference with legal counsel pursuant to anticipated litigation, and we'll report out if there's anything to report out. So,